Howdy, y'all. It's Curious Raven. Merry Christmas. We are on day 10 of Advent. Probably will take a week or so after recording for 10 days straight off. Today, I am joined by a narrator that doesn't narrate anymore. So I hope this is a treat to a lot of you that do listen to him or miss him. It is Jensen. So please, he still has his channel up. He still has videos over there. Go show him some love. Let's get into these stories. My family home is called the Jolly Anglers. We moved in when I was 1 year old in 1978, and parts of it goes back to medieval times as a wayside hotel. Still as the original Ingle Nook fireplaces, was a public house guest house for many years before we moved in. I'll add a picture of it. My mother has from Victorian times when I go around tomorrow. The earliest record of it that I've managed to find is in the 1841 census when William Rivet is the innkeeper. It was acquired by Stewart and Pattison from Farrer & Co. in 1884 and was still a S&P Brewery pub when it served its final pints in 1952. At some point between 1901 and 1911, Angel changed its name to Jolly Anglers, possibly coinciding with the change in landlord. We think the poet Jessie Pope, who moved in Fritton Village after her marriage in 1929, maybe referenced it to a collection of verses entitled Three Jolly Anglers, published in 1913. In the 1900s, they also had added a tea room. Over the years, my mom could have and should have written a book about the paranormal happenings at the house that many of us experienced and have had 3 different paranormal investigating teams visit the house. I will take and upload pictures of the historical features when I'm over there tomorrow. Dad built an indoor pool in 1988, and I found many seashells deep down when it used to be linked by sea, and had a small jetty and boats used to moor up to visit. It's now in the middle of the countryside, and over the years water has receded over a mile away in distance. But many years ago, the sea linked into the lake nearby in the pre-medieval time was largely dug, then to extract heat for burning. The village where the house resides seems to have been known for our Roman heritage, for in a small hillock lying about half a mile north of the lake near to our house. People always want to hear the paranormal side of my parents' house, which is part a medieval wayside hovel, then inn, and then pub after that in Norfolk, UK. So I've written some of the strange things that have happened in my parents' house, the Jolly Anglers. Where do I start? We moved into the house in 1978, and in the first 6 months, Mom was in tears and wanted to leave again as she was scared to death of all the strange happenings. Dad was working away offshore at the time, and they'd used all their money to buy the old house, so knew they couldn't just up and leave. Dad wasn't one for giving in. He also wasn't the one living it daily. Half the time, it was just Mom, me as a 9-month-old, and my older siblings 15 and 17. Now they say teenage energy can cause spirits to be active in houses and attracts them. So maybe that could have been why they all saw a lot when I was a baby in the house. One night Mom was in bed and I was in the cot in the same room when she woke up and heard wrestling coming from the staircase, which is open and goes straight into their bedroom. She then, in the dim light, saw a black shadow floating up the stairs and moved very slowly to my cot. She was in shock and couldn't move for a while and watched it float across the room, and as the figure leaned in to my cot, Mom was petrified and put the side light on in panic, and the shadow just disappeared. She said the noise sounded like a crinoline dress from the material rustled as someone walking along, Victorian era. Another time my parents also, whilst in bed, heard an old honky-tonk type piano playing downstairs. Cigar smoke and voices several times in the first 6 months of living their note, and they had no piano or smoke. Dad always went down to investigate with his double-barrel shotgun, but everything went silent whenever he opened the door at the bottom of the stairs. They lived with daily bangs, strange voices, knocking, and footsteps, all through their lives, and also others. Myself and my siblings have heard these also on a regular basis. My brother and a friend of his, whilst in the lounge one evening, saw the start of what looked like a red woman's dress coming down one of the set of stairs in the old area, which was originally the pub. The pub area is my parents' best lounge and was once 2 rooms. Dad knocked them both into one big room. One was a smoking room and the other was in a bar room, which still has a bar in it, not the original one. My father purchased it from an old retired landlord of a demolished pub in Great Yarmouth. This room had a staircase each, and one staircase goes into my parents' bedroom. The other staircase, the opposite, and goes up into a small hall, and off that are 2 bedrooms. One was my brother's, and the other was my sister's. But I slept in there with her frequently. My parents built a small bedroom downstairs, which was a section of the larger bathroom, which decades before was called the parlor room, not the bathroom. We do know from history records that one of the landlord's children many years ago died in the house of tuberculosis, a young girl about 8 years old. My auntie used to sleep in my old small bedroom when she visited us, and on one evening she was petrified when she saw what looked like flickering candles moving under the doorframe. On another occasion she heard breathing which sounded raspy and a female crying. She ended up sleeping in my brother's room and refused to stay in my little bedroom after the 2 events. Tins in the kitchen have flown out of cupboards and dented the radiator. Pictures have flown off walls, and ornaments also have somehow landed other ends of rooms and just dropped downwards. Small dancing white lights have been witnessed by several people in different areas of the house, also seen by paranormal research teams. All teams have picked up things and seen things, and even been poked by an entity. Psychic mediums have come to the house and said there are many spirits, including a woman who had several children and drowned herself, one young man with a club foot who lived at the pub, and in those days would have been called the imbecile, who owned a black dog which haunts the house too. My mom later investigated documents to the claim, and she saw on the 1899 census that in fact a man classified as an imbecile was residing at the residence. Now, before the psychic talked about the woman, when I was a little girl, about 3, my parents tell me I had an invisible friend. Apparently she was a lady in a red dress, so I said. She used to push me on the swing outside, and I used to talk to her, and she'd play with me and my toys a lot. I said she was a nice lady that liked children. Years later, a neighbor from the village was at one of our parties and was talking about the history of her family. They had lived in our village for many, many years, and she had been doing some family research and had recently found out that her great-grandmother had been pulled out of a lake which is near our house. She apparently had drowned herself because twins were prevalent in her family. She had had 2 sets and was pregnant again. Her husband had recently died, and she couldn't take it anymore. She was very poor, and when they took the body from the river, they didn't have funeral homes in those days in villages. So they always laid the bodies out in a cold place, which is normally the local pub cellar, where in fact she was laid out to be buried in our pub cellar, and they held the post-mortem there too, which she had documents of, which funny enough was my playroom as a child and freezer storage area. Now, no one knows if she died wearing a red dress, but it was sensed that she loved children by the psychic, so everyone thinks that is the lady in a red dress that was my invisible friend as a child. There was an incident once where a family friend's child was over with his mom, and as 3 years old do, they open doors and investigate. Unfortunately, he opened the cellar door and fell to the bottom. Now they are big concrete steps to the bottom of the cellar. My father saw him enter the cellar but didn't see him fall. But when he rushed to him, he was standing at the bottom of the steps, not even crying. They all checked him over and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "The lady got me," and pointed to an area of the cellar. Apparently gave everyone the goosebumps. Another occasion at a party, there was a non-believer who was joking about ghosts and what people had seen and said to a group of people, "It's a load of nonsense." The moment he said that, the old heavy wooden front door creaked open and no one was there behind it. Apparently he went very pale and flustered. Many people witnessed that. Also, people have seen figures in the corner of their eye or movement for years, and we all got used to the footstep, taps, bumps, as in an old house, as it is an old house, and has had a lot of people walk through it. It ended up just a thing you got used to, and Mom didn't leave after 6 months. Dad convinced her to stick it out, and things did calm down, but never completely stopped. When my grandmother died, my father saw her sitting at the end of the bed looking at her daughter. When I was very ill as a child, in bed I saw a man in a black suit, which I thought was the doctor. And I started talking to him, asking where my mom was, and then he disappeared. One of my nieces has seen a lady sitting in an old velvet chair in one of the bedrooms. My other grandmother, when she stayed over once, heard what sounded like rings being dropped into the sink. As all bedrooms have a sink in, as it used to be a guest house. As a teenager, I moved from my sister's old room into my brother's old room, the back of the house. And one night I woke up to see a very tall man in a black cape. We have no street lights in the village, and I never shut my curtains, as we are not overlooked. So the moonlight was coming through my window, and he must have been 6'5" tall, as his head nearly reached the ceiling, and I could see the light. He had fair hair, which was slicked back and parted at the side, but he didn't move. It was like a picture in a picture book. I couldn't help but be quite mesmerized for a few seconds on how clear it was, but I lost the feeling and suddenly jumped up and ran out of that room. Didn't even bother putting a light on. I woke up my parents, and I burst into tears. That really shook me up. After that event, I changed the layout of my room so I couldn't wake up in that position again. Another time I woke and I heard loud footsteps going around the bed, but strangely the footsteps were like heavy boots, and they were at my ear level, not on the ground. To this day, I still find that very strange, and they sounded amplified too. Another time, a man with scraggly long hair poked his head out from one of the sloped ceilings in my room also. Each time I'd shoot out the room and sleep in the other bedroom for a few days before I felt safe to go back in and sleep. Me and my husband and our 2-year-old daughter left at 4 in the morning once after a family wedding because my daughter was crying. My husband picked her up out of the cot bed, and she pointed to the corner near the stairs and said, "Man there." She has autism, and her speech was delayed at that age, but she was physically scared of something that night. She did not settle there, which was very unusual for her. It scared my husband, so he'd said, "We're going home now." When we got to our own home, she slept peacefully. I believe a spirit was being a nuisance to her. One of my mom's best friends was spiritual and told me that I had a gift and that I saw spirits. It's something I never wanted, and it scared me every time. Even in my own house, grown, with a daughter and husband of my own, I still see people, as I call them. My own home at night, and every time I see them, I always think it's an intruder, before ever thinking it's a spirit, and I always fight, not flight. I run at them to attack and always end up running into the bedroom door. My dad has been dead 15 years, and when he died, he died at home in bed, and the house was very active again for a while. My father built a lot of new parts of the house with his own hands, so we all knew he would have a lot of energy there when he passed. Mom now on her own at the house, and she will be 80 in 2022. She now has limited mobility, but she is very stubborn and has no intention of leaving. It's far too big for her to cope with, but she has a gardener and cleaner and I help her a lot with shopping. She says when she leaves this house, it will be in a coffin. My daughter is 11 and she stays with her nan every Friday night. It's her routine, and my mom loves having her. She stays a few days a week when it's summer holidays and school holidays, and she loves the house. But I feel she is spiritual too. So, can sense things, but it doesn't bother her to sleep on her own in my sister's old room next door to my mom's. Until about a year ago, she told my mother she had seen her granddad in mother's room where she slept on occasions, and he asked her a question like, what does she like to do? After that, now she sleeps downstairs, which is now where mother sleeps, also now due to mobility. Well, that's some of the stories anyways. There's many more, but these are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Other experiences. A friend saw a bearded gentleman's face reflection as she passed by a mirror. Mom saw a grotesque male face in a gray similar to what Satan may look like for a split second in her own reflection once in a mirror in the bedroom hallway. I heard my music box drawer click open, and the music started playing when I was trying to go to sleep one night as a child. I removed it from my room after that. My mother also heard that too on occasions. I had china dolls in my room when I was a young teen, and once one of their arms flopped down. Got my dad to remove them, and now are still in their hallway on a shelf. One night, my mom felt really hot while trying to fall asleep. She felt the heating was too high, so went to turn the heating down. The thermostat was in the lounge downstairs. As she went to the thermostat, she suddenly saw the door to the lounge opening. All of us were upstairs. She said she ran so fast up the stairs, she ran out of the top of the nightdress and ripped it. She was shouting when she ran upstairs to my sister to grab me out of the cot and get my brother's bedroom. They then barricaded the door with his wardrobe and didn't sleep at all night till morning, when they all investigated together. Apparently, when my brother complained and said, "It's roasting hot up here, Mom," she replied, "You'll have to bloody sweat, as I'm not going down there until morning." Going up to bed one night, she's turning all the lights off in the lounge. She had a gold latch she used to flip down to secure the door in the lounge to the rest of the house. One night after she had done that, as she walked down the stairs, she suddenly heard the latch flick up and the door slowly open. She ran up the stairs and locked the door behind her and put covers over her face. All the bedrooms have either key locks or bolts on the insides of every bedroom door due to travelers visiting the pub years ago to rent a room for the night if they wanted as guests. Mom very much appreciated the locks and bolts, as she did think it was mostly intruders to start with. It's funny when you look back on it all and you think to yourself, spirits can get through locked doors and bolted doors? But at the time, it makes you feel really safe and secure that they will stay behind the locked door, and funny enough, most of the time, they did. Many times Dad was armed with a shotgun, quietly sneaking around the house after hearing bangs, bumps, and knocks. It's a big house with many steps, levels, twists, and turns, so it could take him a while to do a sweep search of the house. Mom said she was always so relieved when he came back up to bed and said, "No one's broke in," but then both equally perplexed on what the noise was that they heard in the first place. Paranormal investigators, along with Mom and her teenage grandson, witnessed all the glasses in the bar, which are stored upside down, start to all click together several times. Years later, they went from a latch lock in the lounge area to a battery-operated alarm door lock. So, if it's switched on and the door opens, the alarm sounds, which she set religiously. In the middle of the night, she heard the smoke alarm going off. When she went down half asleep and groggy to investigate, she could smell smoke. So she got a stool and checked the smoke alarm, and in her groggy state, she suddenly realized the noise was coming from the door, which had been opened. So hastily shut the door and used the old bolt and ran upstairs. Mom was cleaning behind the bar one morning after a family party we had the night before when she felt something or someone grab her shoulder. There was no one there. There is a small American Indian doll high up on the bar, is still there, and one day my parents noticed I was playing with it as a toddler. They say there was no possible way that I would have been able to get that myself. And they said, "How did you get that doll down from there?" Apparently, I said, "The lady gave it to me." So many to recall, but these are some throughout the 46 years of my life. Added, many lights started to flicker for over a month after my dad's death. I'd forget to add an occurrence my daughter had. She has autism and has also experienced something. She saw my father, who died just over a year before she was born. She was around 11 when this happened, and she's now coming up to 15, and she still remembers it. She won't sleep in my parents' old bedroom anymore due to the experience. For that, she was always happy to sleep in there. She said, "I don't want to in case I see him again." I tried to explain he would never mean to frighten you. And she now sleeps on sofa near my mom's bed when she does stay over. She was sleeping at my parents' house in the bed and room he passed away in, and my mom is elderly and now sleeps downstairs. Mom told me the next day that Isabella had told her. She said, "I saw Granddad in the night and he asked who I was." She said she told him she was his granddaughter, Isabella, and she said he smiled and his mouth was moving, but I couldn't hear any of the words anymore, and then walked away towards the bathroom door. She has seen pictures of him, so she knows what he looks like. I asked what he was wearing, and she said a white polo shirt and dark trousers. Who knows if it was a dream, but she doesn't ever lie. She is a very black and white and matter-of-fact type of person. Story 2.
My parents have been renovating an old house. That has primarily been only used as a seasonal home, as it sits near a scenic lake in upstate New York, near the Canadian border. They live out of state, so we only go there when they're up for a visit, or to occasionally help out, or to chill by the lake in the summer. On a recent visit with my parents, as I was about to leave to go home with my 3-year-old son, he pointed into an empty, dark room and casually asked, "What's the little girl doing in there? Just talking?" My son didn't seem at all scared, just curious, almost smiling, like he wanted to go play with her. I told him, "I don't know. Don't worry about it. Help me put your shoes on." He quickly switched focus to getting ready so we could go. My parents were there too and witnessed the whole thing, but completely acted like it was nothing, as they were very much skeptics. In the following days, however, my dad had mentioned he hadn't noticed for a long time how his tools and supplies for renovating sometimes seemed to have been moved, and he felt a sense of presence. I've always felt a little bit of a spiritual presence in this house, but figured it was to be expected as it was an oldest house in the area. The area itself has also been very old, with many historical events having taken place nearby. Just 500 feet away is an old small cemetery. The feeling in the house always seems strongest just after nightfall. It's not scary or malevolent. It's more of a feeling that you're not alone, about to come around a corner of a door and find something right there, or maybe being watched. Other visitors have told me that they get the same vibe, but we just chalked it up to old house energy. Now, maybe we have a better idea of who is there. I give my son credit because he isn't the only one to make up something like that. He's at an age where if he's using his imagination, it's very obvious, dramatic, and hilarious. He also has said similar things before, in relation to my husband's family old farmhouse, that made sense that he was talking to or spending time with deceased relatives in a loving manner. Only 2 times. It may be noteworthy that on a recent walk by a small cemetery near the lake house, I was drawn to a grave of a girl who died at the age of 5, and the day she died was the same week that my son had this experience of seeing that little girl. Now, I have no way to know if she ever lived in that house, but it seems fairly possible given the small amount of houses in the area at the time, and being only a few gravestones in the cemetery. My hope is that we all can live in peace at this lake house. Although the spirit seems to be innocent, We'd rather it stay chill and not freak anyone out. Any advice would be welcomed. A spiritual friend recommended maybe burning sage or placing black tourmaline crystals, but I don't want to upset this spirit. Some sort of soothing energy would seem best, but I'm open to input.
Story 3.
Thank you for your interest in last night's events. I went to stay with my friends last night. I hate couch surfing, but anything for a little peace of mind. I pulled the trigger and bought 2 cameras with a small monitor through Amazon. They'll be here tomorrow. I like the idea of having these for security reasons, but I'm equally as concerned to see something beyond comprehension. I don't want to worry anyone with any ridiculous actions. I'm not a trigger-happy guy, and I have no intention on actually shooting a home intruder. I use my firearm as a deterrent, and don't wish to harm anyone. If I suspect any uninvited people, I'll call the local authorities. I hope that clears that up. I came home around 9 a.m. with my friend Bruce. We both contemplated the idea of a squatter or intruder, so we searched both inside and around the house, attic to foundation, and found nothing but your typical house insulation and dust. We looked at the floor to see if there were any dirt tracks or missing items. Nothing notable on that end. As far as we can tell, nobody's been in the house except for myself and a few friends over the past 3 weeks. We decided to ask my neighbor to see if they noticed any lurkers or transients around the property. Rick, my neighbor, answered the door. He's been a real help in the past. I borrowed his lawnmower, and he was understandably confused at my question, and hadn't noticed anyone or anything strange. Rick invited myself and Bruce in for some tea and coffee. We obliged, as a free warm cup of English breakfast is always up my alley. We spoke for a bit about college and work, but the conversation shifted to last night's happenings. Rick was interested in the refrigerator door flying open, so I recounted the events as best as I could. Rick told us that between occupancies, he and his wife noticed lights being flickered on and the curtains being open and closed, which they found strange. I asked if it could have been my landlord cleaning up. He said it was unlikely due to the lack of cars being in the driveway. Bruce asked if there had been any of the tenants that had any issues with anything odd in the house. Nothing like what you've experienced, Rick said. After 45 minutes of conversation, we thanked Rick and went back to my place. When Bruce and I returned to my place, there was an undeniable feeling of dread. Best way to describe it would be an awkward, heavy silence after someone finished yelling at you. Bruce and I decided to toss a typo negative vinyl, October Rust, on the record player to settle things down and to chill out. Bruce was sitting across from me when we both heard something fall in the kitchen over the music. We both jumped at the sound. We rushed out of my room to investigate. Both the salt and pepper shaker had fallen from the top of the stove down onto the metal next to the burners, and in the drawers which contained my silverware was wide open. Bruce nodded to me and shut the drawer. Bruce admitted that it was strange, no fridge door flying open and hitting the dishwasher strange, but strange enough. He stayed with me until noon, and ever since, I just had this looming feeling of unrest. I've been closing every door behind me and double-checking the locks on my doors and windows. If I wasn't an anxious guy before, I am now. My ex had a change of plans, so I'm home alone tonight. I'm a little unsettled about the situation, but I'm going to take things slow. Tomorrow when the cameras arrive, I'll set them up and get some sneaky angles. I've got some assignments to wrap up for class tomorrow. My Lex had been chiming at random intervals, which is unusual, but I've been doing my best to ignore it. I might try to assert my dominance over whatever's messing with me. I'm not sure how to approach this fully, and I don't want to dive down a rabbit hole tonight. To address the notion of something following me home, I really don't like the idea of some malicious entity attaching itself to me. I've been thinking about places I might have picked something up accidentally, and it freaks me out. Fairhaven is an old end of town that I frequent, and I'm going to look into some of its history this weekend. I'll keep you all updated on the happenings, or the lack of happenings. Please let me know what you think of my situation here. What should I do? Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
All right, y'all, that was a very long story I read. My voice is starting to hurt a little bit. So I think that is all the stories for today. Please stay safe. Merry Christmas. I hope you got all the love and happiness that you asked for this year. I will see y'all in the new year in 2025. I love y'all so much. Until next time, remember, it's scary out there. Please like and subscribe.
Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered